She fell to the ground, twisting and gasping for air. Guests screamed. Some rushed back. The sun was shining brightly over the quiet village of Umuopara. Everyone was talking about one thing, Ego and Jide's wedding. It was going to be the biggest wedding the village had seen in years. Jide, once called a dustbin boy, was now the man every girl dreamed of marrying. And Ego, she looked like a queen. The compound was busy. Drums were beating, women were dancing. Friends and family moved up and down, helping to prepare. Inside the small living room, Ego sat with her mother, Mrs. Rebecca, fixing her hair. Her eyes sparkled with joy. Just then, a car horn sounded outside. Ego stood up quickly. "It's Chioma," she smiled. Chioma walked in with a big smile on her face, wearing fine clothes and holding a shiny handbag. She ran to Ego and hugged her tightly. "My best friend is getting married," she said, laughing loudly. Ego smiled too. "Chioma, I've missed you." "I brought gifts," Chioma said, placing a basket on the table. "And I have something special to offer. Let me bake your wedding cake. As your best friend, it would be an honor." Ego looked surprised. "Really?" "Yes, I want everything to be perfect for you and Jide," Chioma said, smiling sweetly. But behind that smile was something else. As Ego turned to show Chioma her dress, Chioma's eyes grew cold. She stared at the shiny gold fabric and then at Ego's glowing face. Her fingers clenched the edge of her dress for just a second, and then she remembered. Ego once came to her crying. Jide was poor then. He pushed an old wheelbarrow to survive. Chioma mocked and laughed at her. "How can you, the chief's daughter, fall in love with a dustbin boy? You must be mad, Ego!" That day, Chioma swore she would never let her best friend marry such a dirty man. But now, Jide was rich, clean, respected, and Ego was the lucky bride. Chioma forced a smile as Jide walked in. "I'll make the best cake," Chioma said again. "A cake everyone will remember." That night, as others danced outside, Chioma stood alone in her room. She looked into the mirror and whispered, "She took everything from me, but on her wedding day, I'll take it all back." She reached into her bag and brought out a small bottle filled with dark red liquid. And then she smiled. The wedding day was coming fast. The compound of Chief Obasi was full of noise and happiness. Women sang and danced as they pounded yam. Boys climbed trees to hang decorations. Even the birds seemed to sing louder that morning. Ego was glowing. Her white gown was being ironed. Jide helped arrange chairs outside, laughing with his friends. But far away from the joy, someone was planning evil. Chioma was not at the house. She had told Ego she was going to the city market to buy sugar for the cake. But Chioma didn't go to the market. She took a hidden path deep into the forest, past dry leaves and whispering trees. Her steps were quick. Her face was cold. She stopped in front of a small mud house with red cloth hanging on the door. She knocked once. The door opened slowly. A tall, scary man stepped out. His skin was dark like charcoal. His eyes were red like fire. He was a poison seller. Some called him Agwoturumbe, the man who never smiles. Chioma greeted him with respect and quickly explained what she wanted. "She needs something strong," she whispered. "Not to kill fast, but slow, very slow." Agwoturumbe stared at her for a long time. Then he turned and walked into his hut. He came back with a tiny bottle. The liquid inside looked like thick palm oil, but darker. "Put just 2 drops," he said in a voice like thunder. "The person will feel fine at first, but after the first bite, it begins. Headache, weakness, and then death. By morning, she'll be gone." Chioma gave him money, grabbed the bottle, and hid it inside her bra. That night, back in her kitchen, Chioma worked alone. The cake was big and beautiful, white with golden edges. A flower made from icing sat on top like a crown. She laughed as she picked up the poison bottle. "1 bite," she whispered. "That's all I need." She opened the bottle carefully and dropped 2 tiny dots of the poison into the creamy part inside the cake. Then she covered it back and sealed it like nothing happened. She stepped back and smiled. The cake was ready. The trap was set. And the village would soon gather to celebrate a wedding that would end in tears. The next morning, the sun rose gently over the village of Umuapara. Birds flew across the sky as the sounds of drums echoed in the distance. It was the day before the wedding. Inside the house, Ego's mother, Mrs. Rebecca, was sweeping the compound slowly. Her eyes moved around, watching everyone. She was a quiet woman, but nothing ever escaped her sight. She saw Chioma walking quickly across the backyard, holding a small bag close to her chest. Mrs. Rebecca narrowed her eyes. "Chioma!" she called calmly. Chioma jumped slightly, but turned around with a big smile. "Good morning, Mama. I was just going to check on the cake." Mrs. Rebecca smiled back, but her eyes didn't. "Carry on," she said softly. As Chioma walked away, Mrs. Rebecca watched her shoes. There was mud on them, thick, reddish mud, the kind you only see deep inside the forest. Mrs. Rebecca said under her breath. Later that day, Mrs. Rebecca went to the kitchen to check on the food plans. From the back window, she saw Chioma behind the house speaking on the phone in a low voice. She was facing away and didn't know Mrs. Rebecca was nearby. "All I need is 1 bite, just 1. She'll sleep and not wake up." Ego's mother froze. Before she could step closer, Chioma turned around and saw her. In a flash, Chioma dropped her phone into her wrapper and smiled. "Mama, I was just talking to the cake seller. She forgot to add vanilla flavor." But her voice shook. Her eyes didn't sit still. Mrs. Rebecca smiled again, but inside her heart, something screamed. That night, Mrs. Rebecca sat outside under the moonlight, staring at the stars. She remembered how Chioma once laughed at Ego, calling Jide a dustbin boy. Now she was acting like the sweetest friend. "I don't trust that girl," Mrs. Rebecca whispered to herself. "And tomorrow I will keep my eyes wide open." She didn't know exactly what Chioma was planning, but her spirit told her something bad was hiding inside that cake. The big day finally came. Drums beat loudly, trumpets sang in the air. Laughter and dancing filled the whole village. It was the biggest wedding Umuapara village had seen in years. Colorful wrappers twirled in the air as women danced in circles. Children ran with balloons and sticks of meat. The air smelled like jollof rice, fried goat, and palm wine. Everyone was happy. At the center of it all stood Ego. She wore a glowing, shiny white dress, covered in golden beads that sparkled like fire under the sun. Her hair was braided into a royal crown, and her smile was as bright as the morning sky. Beside her stood Jide, tall and handsome in his shiny red suit. His heart was full. He looked at Ego like she was the only girl on earth. The music paused for a moment. Everyone turned to look as Chioma walked in, holding something large and beautiful. It was the wedding cake, white and gold with red roses made from sugar. A small heart stood on top, with the names Ego and Jide written in shiny letters. "Wow, look at that!" the crowd shouted. Chioma wore a wide smile, her face glowing with makeup and fake joy. She walked proudly, holding the cake like it was a treasure. Ego stepped forward. "Chioma, you made this?" Chioma laughed sweetly. "Yes, my dear friend, I told you I would surprise you." Ego hugged her, not knowing the cake she held carried death. Ego's mother, Mrs. Rebecca, stood quietly in the corner, watching Chioma's hands. Her heart beat slowly like a talking drum. Jide stepped onto the stage. He held the microphone and smiled. "Hello, everyone. Please help me thank Chioma, my wife's best friend. Look at this beautiful cake she made for us." Applause filled the air. Chioma bowed and waved. Everyone clapped for her. She looked around and saw that no one knew her secret, except for one person. Mrs. Rebecca's eyes didn't blink. She saw the way Chioma held her breath when Jide mentioned her name. She saw the small twitch in her smile, and she whispered softly to herself, "Only a snake wears honey on her tongue." The cake was ready to be cut, and death was ready to be served. The crowd cheered as the music rose again. Jide held the cake knife. Ego stood beside him, smiling, ready to cut the first slice. Everyone's phones were out. Cameras flashed. Children jumped. People screamed with joy. But one person wasn't smiling. Ego's mom, Mrs. Rebecca. She had not moved from where she stood. Her wrapper danced in the wind, but her eyes stayed fixed on Chioma. She watched every step, every breath, every fake smile. Then, without warning, she walked quickly to the stage and gently touched Ego's arm. "My daughter," she whispered, "come with me." Ego looked confused. "Mama, now?" "Now," Mrs. Rebecca said again, her voice sharp like a knife. They stepped behind the wedding tent, away from the noise and crowd. "Mama, what is it?" Ego asked, a little worried. Mrs. Rebecca looked around, then stared deep into her daughter's eyes. "Don't touch that cake." Ego's eyes widened. "What? But why?" "I saw it. That Chioma girl is hiding something. I don't trust her smile. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes are not clean." Ego's mouth fell open. "But she's my best friend." "She mocked you once," her mom said. "Now she brings a cake, smiling too much. Something is not right. Promise me you won't eat that cake." Ego nodded slowly, fear rising in her chest. Meanwhile, Chioma had been watching them from the corner of her eye. She saw Ego and her mother talking. She saw Ego's face change. She saw the fear, the doubt. Her hands became sweaty. She walked quickly to the stage and grabbed the mic. "All right, everybody," she shouted, her voice too loud, too shaky. "Let's cut the cake now. Come on, the couple must feed each other." The crowd cheered again. She turned to Jide. "Call your bride." But Ego didn't come. Mrs. Rebecca stepped back onto the stage first,
holding Ego's hand tight. The wind changed. Chioma's smile froze. Something was going wrong. Something she could no longer control.
Ego walked slowly to the cake table. Her hands were shaking. Her smile was weak. Jide stood beside her, still smiling, but confused. He didn't know what was happening. The guests clapped and sang. Everyone was waiting to see the couple cut the cake. Chioma was in front, grinning from ear to ear. Her dress sparkled in the sun. She clapped the loudest. "Let's do it! Let's cut the cake!" Eagle looked at her mother. Mrs. Rebecca stepped forward. Her voice was strong, clear, loud enough for the whole crowd to hear. "Wait!" she said. The music stopped. The drummers dropped their sticks. Everyone turned. Mrs. Rebecca pointed at Chioma. "Before my daughter touches that cake, let Chioma take the first bite." The whole place went silent. Chioma's eyes blinked fast. What are you saying, Mama?" She laughed nervously. "It's their cake, not mine." Mrs. Rebecca stepped closer. "You baked it. You brought it. You should taste it first." Gasps filled the air. "She's right," someone shouted. "Yes, she should taste it," another guest added. "Bite it first," a woman near the stage yelled. Chioma's hands started to shake. Her smile broke. Her voice cracked. No, I already ate at home. I'm full." Jide turned to Ego, confused. "What's going on?" Ego didn't speak. Her eyes were fixed on Chioma. Mrs. Rebecca grabbed a knife. She sliced a piece of cake and placed it on a small white plate. "Here," she said calmly, handing it to Chioma. "Just one bite. Prove this cake is clean." Chioma stepped back. "No, you people are mad. You think I would poison my friend? Me?" Her voice was loud now, angry, scared. She looked left, then right, then she turned and tried to run. "Hold her!" Mrs. Rebecca shouted. Two strong men near the crowd rushed forward and grabbed her arms. The cake was still on the plate. The truth was coming out, and Chioma knew she had nowhere else to hide.
Chioma's legs shook as the two men held her tight. She was crying now, sweating. The proud glow on her face was gone. Mrs. Rebecca stood firm. She raised the cake plate high. Her voice was cold and sharp like a knife. "Eat the cake now!" The crowd was silent. Even the wind stopped. Ego stood beside Jide, tears in her eyes. Her heart was racing. Her best friend, the girl she once called sister, was now her enemy. Chioma looked around, begging with her eyes. "Please, please, no!" One of the men forced her to sit on a chair. The other held her hands. Mrs. Rebecca placed the cake in Chioma's mouth. She bit it. The crowd held their breath. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Then it began. Chioma's eyes rolled back. Her body started to shake. She fell to the ground, twisting and gasping for air. Guests screamed. Some rushed back. Others watched in shock. "Water! Somebody bring water!" a man shouted. But it was too late. Foam came out of Chioma's mouth. She held her stomach. Her body jerked again. And then she started to speak. Her voice was weak, but everyone could hear. "I just wanted to be her," she choked. "I watched Ego shine while I stayed in the dark." She coughed. Her body shook again. "She used to beg me for clothes. Now she's the one getting married to a rich man, with mansions and cars, a happy life." Chioma's eyes locked on Ego's face. "It should have been me," she cried. "I deserved the life." One last gasp. Her body dropped still. Then, silence. People stared. Nobody moved. The cake lay on the ground beside Chioma's body. Jide held Ego close. She was shaking. Mrs. Rebecca looked down at Chioma's body. Her voice, calm but strong. "This is what jealousy brings." The wedding was no longer a celebration. It had become a warning. Ego fell to her knees and cried like a baby. She didn't cry because of fear. She didn't cry because the wedding almost ended in death. She cried because the one person she trusted most tried to kill her. Her best friend, the one who knew all her secrets, the one who stood beside her since they were little girls, now gone with a heart full of hate and jealousy.